I'm meteorologist Ryan Hanrahan. We've got an exceptional event going on in the Caribbean. Hurricane Melissa making landfall as we speak in Jamaica as one of the most powerful hurricanes to make landfall in the Atlantic Basin. To be honest, one of the most powerful hurricanes ever observed in the Atlantic Ocean. And right now, this is in the Atlantic Basin, and this is going to tie the Florida Keys Labor Day hurricane of 1935 for strongest hurricane at landfall, with a pressure of 892 millibars and winds of 185 miles per hour. This is going to be an extremely destructive storm for the western part of Jamaica. There's not much good news here. There's maybe a little bit, which I'll talk about in just a second. But first, the visible satellite loop here. Hard to really say anything more than wow with this. The storm strengthened overnight, strengthened this morning, strengthened up until landfall. To get a hurricane this strong in the Atlantic Basin is extremely unusual. To do it at landfall is almost unprecedented, and this storm is going to be exceptionally destructive for the western half of the island of Jamaica. The only other hurricane, again, that we've seen this strong at landfall was 1935 in the Florida Keys, and in terms of Jamaica, this will be worse than Hurricane Gilbert in 1988, which was their hurricane of record as the storm moves in. We'll take a look here at the infrared satellite loop, and you can see just as classic a look as you can get. Notice that the bright whites are the taller and colder cloud tops. Those are completely symmetrical around the eye, and this storm has just exceptional symmetry, and that's one of the reasons why it's just sort of acting like this buzzsaw as it moves across Jamaica this morning. Now, in terms of where there is a little bit of good news here for Jamaica, it is that the storm, the worst of the storm is going to pass to the west of Kingston, Jamaica, and west of the more populated areas on the eastern side of the island. Still, it is going to be exceptionally destructive and catastrophic for the western half of the island, but the eastern half of the island is in better shape. In fact, Kingston probably doesn't even see hurricane force winds out of this. Kingston is located over here. On the eastern part of the island. This storm, Melissa, is going to move over the western half of the island, then head up toward Montego Bay, and then eventually up into Cuba. But there's really not a whole lot of good news here at all. Just something that's completely jaw-dropping to watch this storm do what it did this morning as it strengthened. So this is a look from the National Hurricane Center. Here's the advisory, and the red shading here on the western half of Jamaica, those are hurricane force winds. The green shading is winds sustained over 50 knots or 58 miles per hour. Notice this is staying west of Kingston. So the city here and the eastern part of the island is going to miss the worst of this, but that hurricane, as it moves in, will completely decimate the landscape. There will be very few structures remaining or left standing, no trees left standing on the western part of the island as the storm moves to the north, and eventually it heads up toward Cuba. Take a look at what the storm track did here. And you can see the storm sort of had an unusual lifespan. It started as a tropical storm south of Haiti. It moved west and it did a loop. It stalled entirely southwest of Haiti. And then as it moved west, it strengthened. It was over exceptionally warm water, strengthened into a Category 5 hurricane. And now it is accelerating off to the north and east. It got caught in a weakness in the jet stream, allowing the storm to come north. And that's what we're seeing now. Now from here, the storm's going to continue up into the Bahamas, and then continue off to the north and east toward Bermuda. Could be near hurricane strength as it gets toward Bermuda as well, but it looks like the eastern tip of Cuba is going to get a very significant hurricane out of this, probably a Category 3, maybe a Category 4. Depends on how the mountainous terrain of Jamaica disrupts the circulation here, but the storm is accelerating off to the north and east. In terms of the probability of hurricane force winds, pretty good across portions of Cuba. Hurricane force wind probability is up close to 70 or 80%. You can see that red shading there. And of course, if we zoom into Jamaica here, I can show you that probability on the central and western side of the island is quite high. But once you get toward Kingston, that probability is much lower, only about 20% or less. So again, missing Kingston, missing some of the more densely populated areas in eastern Jamaica, but western Jamaica is just going to be absolutely clobbered by this thing, which again has been setting records this morning on the top 10 list of strongest Atlantic hurricanes observed, and will be tying the record set by the Florida Keys hurricane from Labor Day. Some of the Hurricane Hunter data that we got this morning. Now, We didn't get a whole lot of it here. We got one pass through the eye from the Air Force. This is from the NOAA flight. And I want to show you this a little more closely. So this is where the hurricane hunters are now. The NOAA flight is actually over Cuba. But this is what they did this morning. You can see they came down, and this is where they intercepted the eye with a pressure of 895 millibars and winds that were just remarkable. This is also a look at this graph here showing as they intercepted the eye. Notice the winds in the eye wall were very strong, 160 knots, 170 knots. And notice the pressure, obviously, in that eye very low, below 900 millibars, which is very, very tough to do. But if you also look closely here, I want to point this out to you. Not everyone's aware that this happens in hurricanes, but the eyes get very warm and they dry out. And you can see as the hurricane hunters went into the eye, the temperature increased from about 10 degrees Celsius to about 20 degrees Celsius. See that jump in the eye. The reason why the air is sinking in the eye of the hurricane, it dries out, it clears out, and that sinking air causes the air to warm. And that is why you get that temperature jump right in the eye. But just an absolute classic and sort of horrifying look to see this thing coming on shore into Cuba, into Jamaica, and then eventually toward Cuba. And one other one I want to point out, this is an Air Force Reserve mission in here. I can pull up the drop zones. So this is what they put into the eye. Let's see, there we go. This is it. Just some remarkable winds here being reported. Winds 170, 180, 190 knots. And let's go back to the NOAA flight. See what they've got in the eye wall here. They had a couple of these drops with just some remarkable winds in the eye wall of this hurricane. And that is why it is going to be so destructive as it moves inland. And once you get inland in Jamaica, there's some elevated terrain there. And that elevated terrain is actually going to help enhance the winds some, even inland. So areas away from the coast are going to get hit very, very hard. Showing you some of our computer models here. This is the HAFS model showing the storm making it over Jamaica. Still a very well-defined eye as it heads into Cuba, leaves the eastern tip of Cuba, and then continues up into the Bahamas during the day on Wednesday. And then from there, if we go all the way up to Bermuda, looks like Bermuda may get smacked pretty good by this storm on Friday. They, at least right now, looks like they may wind up in the eastern semicircle of the storm, which would indicate the potential for some destructive winds as the hurricane moves on by. So again, the situation in Jamaica is quite horrifying at the moment with this hurricane. There is going to be a swath of the island, 25, 30, 35 miles wide, across from coast to coast. That is going to see one of the most intense storms ever observed in the Americas, going back into, you have to go back to colonial times probably to find something that was this severe. It is very intense. It is an exceptionally powerful hurricane, again, crossing Jamaica. Looks like it's going to tie the record for the strongest Atlantic Basin hurricane to make landfall, and it's in the top 3 right now of strongest hurricanes observed in the Atlantic Basin, so the Gulf, the Caribbean, and the Atlantic Ocean. So we will keep monitoring this as the Hurricane Melissa, moves across Jamaica this morning, again making landfall on the western tip of Jamaica. The easternmost parts of the island are going to they're going to be in much better shape than the central and western part of the island. Those are the areas that will get hit the hardest as Melissa moves off to the north-northeast with just an exceptional wind speed of 185 miles per hour and a pressure near record levels of 892 millibars. If you find that on your barometer at home, if you have one, look at how low that is. It's probably way off the scale. So, again, thanks for watching. We certainly think about all the people down in the Caribbean and Jamaica, and then eventually heading up into Cuba and the Bahamas.